brother.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Good. Nice
All
to
right.
meet you virtually
Me
here.
too. Sorry this is taking so long for us to get together.
Oh, no problem, man. I totally understand, and I'm sure your life is at least as hectic as mine. So
Yeah.
I'm always very flexible on the dates, and I'm not real good about setting dates for the show. I just kind of play it by ear, and when me and the other person just feel it, and it's like we're ready, and then we just like come on. So
Yep.
so it worked out perfect, actually.
Nice. What kind of mic is that? A Sennheiser or Shure?
I actually forgot. I think it's a Sennheiser though. I
Yeah.
bought it probably like 3 months ago. Let me see. What is it?
Yeah, it's a
I'm
Sennheiser.
lying. No, I'm lying. It's a Shure.
Oh, it's a Shure.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
Shure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a decent mic.
Yeah. Yeah. I did music and a lot of audio work for a long time.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. I
Yeah.
heard about that. I think I actually tried to look you up at some point and looked up Johnny Royal because I knew you were in a band and I saw some of your music. I don't know if it was punk or what. I couldn't tell. I only saw a brief glimpse of it.
Oh yeah, it's industrial.
Industrial. Okay, right on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have I guess a similar background in that way. How old are you?
44.
You're 44. Okay, so I'm 48, I think. So I'm always off for like a year, man.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like the mic, it's I know I got a mic. I'm not sure if it's a Shure or a Sennheiser though.
Yeah.
So but yeah, when I was younger, I was skating and listening to punk and hardcore and dyeing my hair and I think
Yeah.
there's like a subgroup of us Masons who were
Yeah.
in all that stuff and then got into Masonry later. So we
Yep.
we share that connection.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Artistic thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, brother, so I think we're recording now. So welcome to the show, Johnny Royal, brother Johnny Royal.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. So a lot to discuss with you. I mean, definitely someone I admire. And so what I usually do is on the show, I let the guests sort of introduce themselves and generally, by talking a little like a biographical thing, like, talk a little bit about your past. I know you did something like that. In fact, in one of your documentaries, I think 33 and Beyond, you talked a little bit about your past and your family and stuff. So I don't want to bore you having to rehash all that again. Maybe you can add some new nuance, but yeah, I'd just love to hear about your journey as a human being, where you came from and how you got into Masonry.
Yeah. So, my journey goes back to Europe. I was born in Spain, and my my dad was in the Air Force. Um, we moved around quite a bit, and I always liked storytelling. My grandfather was a big storyteller. We'd sit around with him at nighttime at his house and in the rural mountains slash hills of Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania by West Virginia. And he'd tell stories. He played guitar too, so I got into playing guitar because of him. I started playing when I was 9, and one of my degrees in school is in music performance with a concentration in classical guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I did music for a long time. I did that because I loved the storytelling aspect, and then in between, I was always working in like either advertising or creative, and I got into commercial directing, and I really liked directing. It's like kind of like a canvas for all artistic mediums, from music to visual, color and design, and all of those kind of things. So I directed over 1,000 commercials before I went full time into film and writing.
All right.
So,
All right.
a
So that's how
lot
you
of
got your start
commercials.
in film
Yeah.
and stuff. I see.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And with Masonry, going back to I was in a study abroad program in England. I was studying at Westminster University, and I discovered I got lost one day, and I ran into the Grand Lodge of England, and I saw the square and compasses above the door, and that kind of is what started my journey of awareness about Freemasonry. And I loved all of the philosophical teachings and the aspect of comparative religions, and that putting into a ritualistic and ceremonial format was really appealing for me. And I moved from Pennsylvania to California in 2005, and about a year. I think during that time, California Grand Lodge still had the rule that you had to at least been you had to be a California resident for about a year before you could petition a lodge.
Where did you move in California? Where was it?
I was right in Hollywood.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Santa Monica in early childhood, like 1 to 7 years old. So like
Okay.
the 70s, I was in Santa Monica.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my lodge, my home lodge, is Santa Monica Palisades 307.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I mean, I was so young at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, but cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great lodge. The guys are incredible. I'll be junior warden next year, depending on everything that happens with the virus.
Right.
But if we reopen. But yeah, I'm on my path for junior warden, and then I've gone through all of the York Rites, so Royal Arch, Cryptic Council, and the Commandery, and I'm very active in Scottish Rite. I'm the assistant director of the work for my valley, and past commander of Kadosh, and currently the orator for the chapter of Rose Croix. And on the Scottish Rite side, I committed to doing for myself, writing a paper per degree per month.
Oh, wow.
So tonight I'm actually presenting to Scottish Rite Masons around the world. Literally, there's brothers from the Philippines and Canada and all different states across the country, but we're going over the 5th degree, and I write it and present it in an exoteric format so that we don't have to worry about having it tiled per se.
Right.
But yeah, tonight I'm presenting on Perfect Master, the 5th degree, Southern jurisdiction format. But
that's great.
Yeah.
I'll be there. That's awesome. A great story. Would you say that you were always, from the time you were young, attracted to deeper things and mysteries, and you were very curious as a child, or is this something that developed later in life?
My curiosity definitely, my interest began when I was a child. I mean, I was always into science and math and even philosophy. My dad would wake me up and teach me about philosophy, anything from Aristotle to Socrates, and he would break it down in a way so that as a child I could kind of comprehend and understand that.
So you had a cool dad then.
Oh yeah. And
awesome.
In college, I almost changed my major to philosophy. But my friends were like, "You're not going to make any money being a philosopher." Like, well, now it's just the world needs more philosophers.
Oh, I'm telling you, we really do. And I actually studied psychology in undergrad, and I had almost a double major in philosophy and psychology. So you can say I was one class short of a double major. And then I have a master's in terrorism and countering violent extremism, because that was relevant. Still is relevant.
Awesome. I did some work with DARPA for the DoD.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's see. I've got a bunch of different questions here. So let's talk about your movies, I guess. I've seen both of them, and they're just amazing. First one I saw was 33 and Beyond, The Royal Art of Freemasonry, and I was like, finally, somebody made Masonry cool, and produced something with good cinematography, not some geeky trailer or, some documentary that's like half conspiracy theory that you can't even believe anything. You did something professional that really brought the respect back to the craft. And so I was really excited. And I've watched that documentary a number of times, showed a lot of people. And then you came out with Illuminated, the 2019 Illuminati one. Awesome again. Just a beautiful work. And you were in the Cannes Festival this year, right?
It's screened for all the international market buyers at Cannes. And then we just made a deal with one of the top 3 distributors in Germany to cover Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And we also made a deal with a big distributor in Japan too. So it'll be on TV, the Prime network stations in those countries pretty soon. And with my journey into film, 33 and beyond, at that time I was still directing commercials, and that film took 7 years to make because I didn't know what the story was. It was just once I got into filming it, there were no boards, or there was no story arc. It was just
okay.
like, hey, the idea was just kind of like be a fly on the wall, but I knew that wouldn't really capture what the essence was. The more that we got into the interviews, especially with Bob Davis and Jim Tressner, the late Jim Tressner from Guthrie Valley, Scottish Rite.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the idea to make that film after I had been passed to the fellowcraft degree, because that was a very beautiful and profound degree. I think it for most people it is, and I wanted to figure out a way to share that experience in some way with the rest of the world, not just Masons, because I felt that if everybody in the world could experience a little bit of that beauty, it might make the world a little bit brighter. So that was my goal with it. And I was very. It was a very slow moving train, because that was the first, I think, progression into film for the fraternity as a whole, at least for the United States.
That's
and
right.
a lot of people were very reluctant about, like, oh, are you going to give away secrets and this and that?
Right.
It's like, it's not the point. So, my dad always used to say, if you want to create something that's going to be long lasting, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in areas that you need expertise and advice on. So, I talked to a lot of past grandmasters and, different board members of different communities in Masonry. And, even when we were in post-production, I screened the first cut of the film for the board at Guthrie to see if, is there anything that, in your opinion, that is breaking any oaths or boundaries or obligations. And there was one thing that they suggested that I remove because it wasn't part of the actual ritual, which was I had some stuff with shot with a chamber of reflection, like a beauty shot for a segue into when it goes into the Blue Lodge degrees. So there was a shot that we replaced there, and then just a couple other little things that we skated around. And making that film, it was really Bob Davis, and that he kind of helped me, without helping me, he kind of helped me figure out what the story of Masonry was, is that it's the hero's journey. So then I got into looking at aspects of storytelling as far as like the hero's journey goes, with Joseph Campbell's model,
right,
and the hero's quest, and that really helped me kind of construct the bare bone architecture to the story, and we built off of that. And then we finished that up, and we screened that in the theater at the Grand Lodge in California on Friday the 13th. We were going to do it on Saturday to the 14th, and then the Grand Secretary was like, we should do it on Friday. And we were like, okay, so we booked it, and then we didn't even know the date was the Friday the 13th. We're like, oh my God, it's Friday the 13th in October. The conspiracy
you should invite all the Demolay, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We were like, oh, the conspiracy crowd's probably going to go crazy.
I know.
But we had a really great turnout for that. And that's coming up on its 3-year anniversary already.
Wow.
And then with Illuminated, the idea that I had for making that, I got Joe Wage's book, Secret School of Wisdom, where him and Reinhard Markner, who are both in the film, and Joe's an executive producer of the film, and Reinhard's one of the producers, but they transcribed the Bavarian rituals of the Illuminati in English. So that started that idea. And at first I was going to focus strictly just on the rituals, but the more I dug into it, I realized that it was the story of Adam Weishaupt and his journey through life. And, like myself, I related to him a lot because, his parents had passed when he was young. He was raised by his godfather, and he was introduced into Enlightenment era thinking at the time, which was very prohibited by the Catholic Church. And so, he was a curious young man and a philosopher, and he kind of created that society. It was first a book club, and then he infiltrated Freemasonry with the help of Kaniga and some other Freemasons from the strict observance, and
Right.
we let that story kind of just tell itself. So,
Was Weishaupt around at the same time as Pasquale? Do you know anything about any connection between those two guys?
I don't know of any direct connection. That would be a good question for Joe. Joe's like an
Yeah.
encyclopedia when it comes to Illuminati history, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look into that.
I do know that with Rosicrucianism that they had a big war with the Rosicrucians, or like a written exchange war about membership, because they were all fighting. Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati were all fighting for like the same membership during that time.
Right. Interesting. And in so many ways, all three of them are really out to do very similar things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people get confused by these sort of outer names and new orders and throughout history and time. But oftentimes, sort of the essential truths that are underlying these orders or these outward appearances are very much the same over time.
Mm-hmm.
What morphs is the outer shell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so in a way you could almost get, what you want out of Masonry from whatever order you choose to
Mm-hmm.
join. It just depends, it's like you get what you put into it, so if
Yeah.
you really work the Blue Lodge, you can transform yourself as a human being just through the Blue Lodge. Or if you prefer, you can do it through Scottish Rite. If that's not your preference, look, we've got Royal Arch, we've got Commandery, there's all these other, invitation only bodies. We can join the Golden Dawn. You got to figure out what's going to really get you there to where you want to be as a Mason, I think. And so on that front, I mean, where do you tend to focus your energies? I mean, because in Masonry, you can get really spread.
Sure. My main focus as far as research is in the Scottish Rite, because I think that the way that the perspective of the Masonic teachings and the philosophies that are incorporated into Masonry is laid out, I think that the Scottish Rite does the best as far as an analytical examination of using multiple sources that kind of combine into one. They flow into one stream, and then you can follow that to the fountainhead, and that river, that stream that goes back to thousands of years. Those springs, those well springs, are where you find the origins of Masonry, really.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a combination of elements of the best of humankind throughout human history that have been brought together to teach philosophical and religious truths that are unwavering and that are timeless. And that when you really put, for me, when I put my time and effort into learning about Scottish Rite Masonry, because there's a lot of things in Blue Lodge Masonry that, when you go through those degrees, none of those things are ever explained, or you're not given you're told like, okay, this is what it means, but that meaning itself is very shallow in a lot of the explanations and the teachings that were given in Blue Lodge. So for me, that's not enough. For a lot of people it is, and that's fine, but for me it's not. And I prefer to look deeper, and for me the Scottish Rite is where I find those answers.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's similar for me. And, obviously in the Scottish Rite, there's so much to potentially explore. I mean, any one degree is just so chock full of mysteries and clues. So there's like, a billion rabbit holes you can go down in the Scottish Rite. So it's definitely at least one lifetime journey, at least. So, from your experience making documentaries now, what would you say has been your biggest, the hardest thing about doing them? What the one part that you're just like, oh, it's so hard, and then what part of it is just the best that you love so much?
The hardest part, there's two parts that are difficult. On the technical side, when we get to we have picture and mix lock, and the film is ready to be you know, ingested into platforms for distribution. The rendering process, I just, my wife, if I'm like, I'm rendering something, she's like, I'm leaving the house, you know, because it's just me screaming at my computer. But on the
wait, rendering is like the isn't that the final editing when you're just saving it, or what?
No, so rendering is when you're taking everything in your timeline, like if you're using Premiere, and you know, you have multiple audio tracks and you could have multiple video tracks. So when you render something, you're telling the project to export that file into like a ProRes 422HQ.mov file.
Right.
You know, so you can watch it on a device. Right. So, but it's crunching down, you know, like 33 and beyond, that was almost 4 terabytes of information of data. Wow. That's a lot, you know.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a slow process.
Yeah, I mean, and what happens is with, you know, unless you have a render farm, the computer, the core of the computer heats up and it slows down the processor. So you get these errors and it will just crash or shut down the whole system. You know, it took us a month, literally 12 hours a day to try to get the render done for 33 and beyond.
Oh my God. I had no idea it was like that.
Yeah, it's just a nightmare. And render farms to get render farms are expensive. I mean, you're looking at like 50 grand, you know.
Oh Jesus. Couldn't you rent space on a farm or something?
Just it depends. Like, I mean, it's funny, like if you watch the render for the new Star Wars that J.J. Abrams did, like they literally have, I think they had like 200 computers all connected together, and they're rendering like, you know, 5-second spots. And those 5 seconds alone were taken, they were like, you know, 12 hours to render.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I mean, painful. You need like supercomputers. Yeah. Very painful. Very painful. On the storytelling side, the part that I kind of cringe at is that with a documentary, it's not scripted. So you're putting your story together in post-production, meaning that you're scrubbing through the interviews, you're listening to the audio, and then you're figuring out like how to put together the story. So you're kind of like, you're scrubbing, you're like, oh, I like this part, and I'm going to save that clip. And then you end up with like 10,000 clips, and you just try to, it's like putting a puzzle together. So I'm not crazy about that part, which is why, you know, we have a documentary coming out. The last one that I'm doing is on the Shriners, and I'm not doing any more documentaries after that. And I said that after Illuminated, but the Shrine, Carl Thompson, who's the potentate for Al-Qaeda Shrine in Portland, they hired us to produce the Shriner documentary.
Oh, okay.
So like, okay.
So it wasn't you that chose that. It's somebody reached out and asked you to do a Shriner documentary.
Yes, correct. Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've been in touch with the Imperial in Florida, and they've been great, very supportive. We have a lot of different shrines that are giving us archival, you know, old film footage that's being digitized from like the 1920 Portland parade when the vote went through for the Shriners Hospital. But anyways, you know, so I'm not doing any more documentaries after that one. But the part that I'm doing scripted only. So we're working on an original. It's a supernatural horror film trilogy, and the first one is called Son of the Dawn. And that one, I've been working on that script for 2 years. But you know, scripted features are very, very difficult to write. And any writer, you know, any professional screenwriter knows that. But you have a map and you have a plan where you can shoot it over, you know, 30 to 60 days every day with a set shooting schedule, and you don't necessarily shoot in order. But while that's happening, because it's scripted, you can also have a post-production trailer on set. So when you get your dailies or you know, your shots at the end of the day, you can have someone doing the audio mixing, and you can have the editors working on those things, and you can actually do post-production while production's happening. And the budgets are a lot bigger for those too, and the process is is more enjoyable. So
okay.
We're doing that.
Explains it.
Yeah, it's just documentaries are just, it's
It's a
a
lot of work.
lot of, yeah, people that do documentaries, they do them for the love of the subject matter.
Sure.
Unless you get to a level like Alex Gibney, who did the Scientology documentary. The
Hmm.
one he won an Academy Award for that, for best documentary, several years ago. But that's pretty much all he does, and he directs some other things too. But his documentaries, like, they make a lot of money.
Right.
Um, so to become a big documentarian, like, it's a labor of love, and it's a very difficult process, no matter what your
I
budget
see.
is.
I see. So you're not getting out of filmmaking. You're getting out of
No,
documentary filmmaking, and you're
yeah,
moving
just
in
just
just regular.
documentaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Okay.
features, and then we're doing some TV stuff too. We're working on a mini series, that it's based on. It's inspired by true events based around the modern day mafia, the real
Mm.
mafia, organized crime, and we have some really cool stuff happening with that. It's going to be a fun project, and
Hmm.
I'm writing and directing that, and then those other horror films. Um, but my favorite part of the documentary filmmaking aspect of it is the journey of discovering the story. Like, uh, with 33 and Beyond, I got to not only film at so many different temples and lodges, um, and different locations, but I met so many amazing friends and brothers in the fraternity,
I'm
that
sure.
I still talk to, at least once a month, today. And when that screened theatrically, we sold out 64 markets, so I attended every theatrical screening, and I got to meet a lot of the brothers. I stayed with a lot of them at their homes and met their families, and it was just a great experience. And then with Illuminated, I mean, that was incredible because we filmed a lot of that in Germany, and our headquarters, our home base is at Schloss Eggersberg, which is a castle that my friend Count Wenzel Sylvester owns, and it's in Eggersberg, which is north of Ingolstadt in Bavaria. But we got to
Hmm.
stay in a castle and
Oh,
film
that's so
there, and
cool. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it was great. Germany's beautiful. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, the journey, that's my favorite part of making documentaries.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what is the part that you like the most about filmmaking? Or what's the most fun for you? I mean, you talked more about the challenges, but what is it that's really like you most exciting for you?
For me, it's seeing, with documentary, like I said, it's unscripted, but with Illuminated, there was the narration that was there, and then 33 and Beyond, I had to go on camera because there were a lot of holes that needed to kind of be patched up in the story arc. So that's why I was interviewed, and I didn't even
Right.
really want to be in the film.
Uh-huh.
And the same thing with Illuminated, but you know, having talking heads the whole time isn't very, exciting to me in
I
a
hear you.
film, especially documentary. But I think that uh, overall, the when I look at whether when I'm writing something or I have the idea and then I put the idea into motion, but seeing it come to life on film,
Hmm.
and getting to watch when the final cut's done and I get to watch it front to back, just thinking like, wow, like I helped, I was a part of
Right.
making this.
Right.
I led the making of this. I mean, it's really cool, and it's not from the ego where that satisfaction comes from. It's that realization that maybe I did something that can uh, make the world a little bit better, or it can change
Absolutely.
someone's perspective on something that they thought was true but it wasn't true, or dispel myths and superstitions. And we're charged with that in Masonry to to
Yeah.
try to help overcome superstitions and those kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
things.
you certainly, I mean, with your medium, you can have a big influence, for good or bad, depending on what you do. I mean, there's a lot of films these days that are just, putting trash in people's minds. So, you're doing you're trying to do the opposite, which ties in as the sort of the Illuminati ideal or the Rosicrucian ideal, of rebuilding the temple, or restoration of our world, up leveling the consciousness which is a laudable thing to do. And I also aspire to do the same in my own way, however I can. Um, so have you ever thought about doing a biographical film? Like, I mean, I can think of a lot of really interesting characters, like a film about Albert Pike, like, or Manly Hall, or who knows, Eliphas
Hmm.
Levy, or anybody. There's so many interesting characters that a movie hasn't been made about yet.
Hmm. Um, I have. I mean, that still
Yeah,
kind of falls in the realm of documentary filmmaking, though, too.
kind of. It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Because that's what Illuminated was. It was about Weishaupt, and it incorporated
Right.
like the rituals and things. So,
That's true.
those are all great. I mean, all the people you mentioned, they're great. But then you get into like their works and how did they come up with their works and what were the finished works.
Right.
But
Right.
it's great subject matter.
Do you think part of it is it just too heady and intellectual and it's exhausting and you don't want to deal with that and you'd rather be free and just do something more artistic and more in the realm of just fictional film?
It's not that it's too heady. It's just that there's a risk that you run. Illuminated was a much bigger challenge than I anticipated, because the one very simple thing that I overlooked when I decided to make the project was that we're dealing with something so far back in time where their photographs didn't exist, and even portraits for a lot of the people didn't exist, like Weishaupt's wife and his second wife and his children. So we had to think of very creative ways when we were talking about them, how to show them, and we chose showing nature like flowers and using the seasons for talking about phases of life for those main characters. So we had to get very creative with it, and it worked. But it gets to be a point where it stops being fun, because you're trying to logically stitch something together than rather have the ability creatively to have these different assets at your disposal, where you can just kind of pick and choose, like, okay, like there's some stock footage of this maybe I can use, or do a recreation of something like that. But it gets really tricky like that.
I see. So you feel more free maybe and more of a fictional genre of filmmaking. Would you say that?
I would say
Creatively.
that, yeah, creatively there's really no bounds, because I can use dreams, and on a lot of the stuff that I'm writing now, like specifically for Son of the Dawn, it's on a human level, it's about a character that deals with anxiety, and he's a writer. And then I use supernatural elements and elements of horror to illustrate and symbolize the journey that he's going through to face his kind of shadow self. And the philosophical debate that I kind of put into play is, does free will actually exist, or are things predetermined? And
Age-old question right there, bro.
yeah.
Oh,
And
tough
is
one.
there just a divine consciousness, or is there a deity, or are there deities that actually interfere or lend aid to mankind? So those kind of things are tackled in it. And I've taken my time with the script, because I've got back into reading a lot of philosophical works, especially like Camus. I've been really digging deep into Albert Camus. He wrote The Stranger and Happy Death, and
right,
a lot of other great works. But there's just more, I think, more freedom and more fun to be had with it. And
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it can hit a wider range of people that way too.
So is this your job full time now, or do you actually have a day job, or is it just
No,
filmmaking?
I just do filmmaking full time.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's great to be free of work that you do out of obligation and be able to do what you really love and make a living.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome.
It's a blessing, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is a blessing. So, I mean, have you had any like sort of famous people become interested in your films? Have you ever had somebody like in Hollywood reach out to you, like, your Illuminated movie's great, man? That surprised you?
I have. Yeah, I
Ooh,
have.
I'd love to hear the
Uh,
story.
I I've developed friendships with some of these people, and part of the candor that we have, it's based on keeping things kind of confidential.
Hmm.
So
Well, I
I don't want to.
understand that. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
can't name drop really, but there's been some really, there was a couple of people that I was just like, wow, they messaged me over Instagram after they had seen Illuminated in particular,
Mm,
and then another pretty famous person messaged me about 33 and Beyond, and they ended up
fascinating.
joining the fraternity after
Oh,
watching the film.
wow.
So, yeah.
So, let's say, don't tell us who any of these people are, but what categories of people are they? I mean, are these comedians? Are these regular sort of Hollywood drama stars? Are these famous musicians? What would be the type?
I would say so. One is a very, very famous musician.
Okay.
Very, very famous. I mean, like, level of like,
Like everyone knows the person basically.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Beatles, Rolling Stones fame.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah. And then some of the other people are it's pretty well-known actors. Uh, that kind of like on the level of Star Wars and
I
that
see.
kind of stuff. So,
And so, but they all reached out to you in relation to Illuminated.
yeah,
That's what got them. Oh, isn't that interesting? Cool.
yeah. And they were very humble too. They're like, oh, we hope, I'm assuming you're probably really busy, and I'm like,
Like,
you're being humble with me.
I,
Like, that's funny.
that is, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, because this stuff's deep, so they probably respect you. You think, oh God, this guy must know so much, and this is an amazing film. And some of them haven't been exposed to this material before, and they want to learn more.
yeah. That
Yeah.
was the main thing, is that they wanted to learn more, and that was like the beginning of the conversation. So I want to learn more, and I always start with, well, it's a testament to how little I know, but I'm on a path where every day I'm reading and I'm writing,
Hmm.
and that's really what it transcends into.
So, do you meditate? Do you do any kind
I
of
do.
meditation? Oh, okay.
I do transcendental meditation. I do it when I wake up, and I'm actually doing it right now too. I've been practicing doing it while I speak and do interviews,
Oh, wow.
and just focusing on a mantra, and I focus on the symbols of the sacred word of the 32nd degree. That's my mantra.
Okay. Wow. Cool, man. So, do you have like a rosary or something that you're doing? Is that how you're doing it, or is it just like sort of it's in the background of your mind? You're like
No,
multitasking.
yeah, it's just in my mind constantly. It's my vibration that
Oh, I
at
get it.
first when I started doing it, it was difficult because when you're just in your mind, you're used to, if you're doing like a mantra out loud, you're expelling air from your lungs and creating a vibration, and uh, there's volume. So in my mind, I would constantly, it would be crescendoing into this massive volume, but I'm like, my mind's not even actually breathing. It's just, it's a part of my existence. So,
Mm,
I don't need to keep like breathing in and breathing out to do this mantra. It's just a steady frequency that I've been able to kind of attain, that it's just always there.
that's nice. Yeah, I mean, I had a period where I was doing a lot of Vedic mantras, like and chanting with japa. I was into Hinduism many years ago, and especially Vedic stuff. And I was into Vedic astrology, and I started doing a lot of planetary mantras for different planets. And depending on my chart, what planet I needed to strengthen, I would just chant that planetary mantra. So I know what you're talking about. After you do it for a while, it just sort of settles into you, and it's just sort of there, just always sort of resonating, I guess, at some level in your heart or in the background. You're always sort of hearing it or feeling it in some way. It's great stuff. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Meditation in general, I mean, whatever form people find. I also did a lot of Zen, just like, just empty the mind and, just be, and, imagine your thoughts like leaves going down the river, but don't follow the leaf, just let it go, and then come
Yeah.
back to just the flow again. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so what about the origins of Freemasonry? Getting a little more esoteric here.
Hmm.
How far back do you think? I mean, I know like the Grand Lodge, 1717, this whole thing, but I mean, how far back do you think this goes? I mean, there's the people that talk about it going all the way back to Egypt and potentially even beyond that. Some people go back to Adam and Eve and Cain and Seth, and there's so many different, ideas out there and different theories. What's your take on that?
My take is that the actual organization of Masonry does not go back that far. I mean, there's no
Right,
historical documents to support that, right?
right,
Um, you know, and I'm not a Masonic historian. Like that's something, like Adam Kendall and Arturo de Hoyos, like those are the guys
sure,
that I go to when I have questions about that kind of stuff.
sure.
But the other side of it, though, is that a lot of the teachings in Masonry do go back. They're pulled from theology. They're pulled from comparative religions and philosophy that are thousands of years old.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
and like we talk about, like brother Pythagoras. Like Pythagoras did not have a Masonic lodge that
Right.
he with the working tools and the rituals. He
He
didn't
wasn't
have that.
eating
I mean,
green beans and grilled cheese sandwiches or anything like that.
no, no, but the teachings of these individuals and these schools of thought, that's Pike refers to that in Morals and Dogma, like when you follow those streams of thought to that fountain of where that originates, that's where Masonry originates. And that's what he means by that, is that those types of schools of thought are those are the founding doctrines, in a sense,
Hmm.
for Masonry. Judaism, Kabbalah, Sufi mysticism, Vedic astrology, um, you know,
Alchemy.
uh, yeah, alchemy. Even one of his biggest influences in writing Morals and Dogma was A History of Magic, by
Hmm.
Eliphas Levi.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I mean, that's one of his. When you look at De Hoyos's annotated edition of Morals and Dogma, and I was surprised to see that come up so much, because Pike wouldn't release or reveal his references in the earlier editions.
Hmm.
Um, but that led me to I've been studying those works, like the authors, but it's called Whole Works,
Hmm.
and that was another big uh, source of his inspiration for Morals and Dogma.
Oh, interesting.
But
Okay. I
yeah,
didn't know about that one.
yeah, Whole Works.
Whole works. Okay.
Yeah, Whole Works. But yeah, I don't subscribe to the school that like the Templars necessarily were. I mean, whether the Templars had initiatic rituals, probably. I mean, initiation ceremonies are ancient; they are
Right.
old.
Right.
So, but whether they were related to speculation on on craft stonemasonry, in that
Hmm.
sense, I don't know.
Yeah.
They found a minutes book that was from 1599 in Scotland. That's historically factual evidence that it's older
Wow.
than 1717.
Well, there you
So it
go.
does go
Hmm.
back
Interesting.
1599. Yeah, and then you look at the time of the Templars. I mean, that's 1600, and then the disbandment of the Templars by the Catholic Church. That's not, that's a couple hundred years. So I mean, you could speculate maybe there's a possibility that it was an oral tradition, you know, that was passed down in some form. But historically,
Yeah.
I don't really get into speculating on that,
Sure.
because that, to me, that's superstition. But it's a romantic thought, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
it's a romantic thought. Yeah, and I mean, well, particularly to believe that masonry in its current form goes back, some period of time beyond even 1500. I think that's a bit romantic. Um,
right,
but I mean, I personally believe that this sort of truth has always been out there and existed, and people have tried to model, that conception of truth, or that understanding of truth in different ways, in different words, and in different frameworks, whether it's the Kabbalah or whether it's describing it through this alchemical symbolism. But everyone's trying to describe the truth, and it's been described in different ways throughout history. And I think that some of these sort of initiatory secret societies throughout history that have, flowered in different names at different times for different circumstances, are often the repositories of this information. And what's interesting about these secret societies is they're often very open. They're not like, oh no, we only look at the Christian knowledge. They like take what knowledge wherever they can find it. They put it, this is good stuff, bring this in too. Oh, we got some Vedic knowledge, this is going to help us. Or we got, they don't worry about this identity politics. They just want the truth, and they want anything that's going to help them to get deeper. That's one of the things I love about Masonry, because I've been like that anyway. I was like that, and then I found out that's what Masonry is all about. I'm like, this is perfect. And other people I know have said, well, I'm not really a joiner. I don't join clubs, and I'm not a joiner either. I'm not like some follower of groups or anything like that. But I never saw Masonry as a kind of group that would, put your brain to sleep. It was all about, no, it's your journey. You explore, we've got all kinds of clues and we can stimulate you, but at the end of the day, it's your journey. So how is that really joining, in a sense, something that, you know what I mean? It's not like Scientology, for example, which has like this complete ideology, and they're going to embed that in you, and you've got to follow them, you can't break the rules.
Right. And that's the thing too. I mean, that's a very important thing you just hit on, because, like there's the big, one of the big questions is, what's the difference between religion and philosophy? And when you look at a religion, in a sense, a religion is a cult, and not in a negative aspect, but the word cult means worship, right? Right. But you are, in a sense, in a religious mindset, you're following the will of one person or a small group of people, right? Christians follow the teachings of Christ. Right. Muslims follow the teachings of Muhammad. Judaism follows the teachings of Moses and the Ten Commandments, as the founding doctrine. But as you know, I don't think that Masonry is about joining a group. I mean, some people do join for fellowship, but really it's not a religion, because it doesn't say like, this is what it means. It says that it's up to you to figure out what this means for you. And it doesn't matter. There's someone in our lodge that is a very, very smart guy, but there was a big debate about like, well, is this historically true, or is this true? And, about things that we learn in the degrees. And he said, it doesn't matter whether or not the story's true or not. It matters what you take from the story. Right. And that's very, appealing wisdom, because when you look at Greek mythology, especially, whether you believe literally, or same thing with Christianity or any religion. But if you believe literal, that's one thing, but symbolically, like the Odyssey and just a lot of these, a lot of great myths and these stories, even Shakespeare, it's they don't have to be true. It's the lessons and the fundamentals that you're taking out of these mythos to apply to your daily life that become building blocks for you to become a better person, because that's what it's all about. And becoming a better person isn't just on the physical charitable side of things. It's about how you look at things as well too. And it's about how you incorporate metaphysical virtues into your practical physical daily life. And, when you reach that state of kind of Zen or that awareness, then, it's not saying you're not going to lose your temper every once in a while, or you're not going to overindulge in things, but you're aware of it at least. And you have a clear distinction of, this is not the path that, I have set myself on. And, Aristotle talked about, that all human beings are instilled with a sense of inherent goodness and knowing what's right and what's wrong. You can look at other philosophers like Nietzsche and, some other, more modern day philosophers that would argue that good and evil is just a human concept. And that without the ontological nature of human beings, that good and evil doesn't exist. So for instance, if a comet smashes into the earth and it destroys all life on the earth. That's not
Hmm.
evil, because we're just in its trajectory and its path. And,
Right.
those are the laws of nature beset
It's not
before
like
us.
it's not
So,
like the comet had a bad intention or anything like that.
right, exactly, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
and you can look at life that way too. I mean,
Yeah.
people can have, we have a will to do things.
Right.
So we do have intention, but at the end of the day, what I've seen, what I've learned is that no matter what, we all, you know, the first law of thermodynamics is that energy can't be created or destroyed. So we always have been in some form of existence, and we always will be. When we die, we don't have a body anymore, so we lose the five senses that we've become accustomed to.
Mm.
But when we die, and I've had two near-death experiences. The first one, I was 5 and I drowned, and I don't remember anything. I remember waking up, my lungs burning from the water coming out of my lungs. But the second one, I was in a car accident. I was 26, and I remember everything. And there was no bright beam of light or anything like that. But I was in a dark space, and it was like almost like a fluid, like just a
Wow.
like a gelatin. But I couldn't necessarily feel it because I wasn't in my body. But there was a very clear sense of like almost like if you have a really bad anxiety attack, like there was chaos, and there was order there as well too.
Hmm.
And I think that the things that we do in life kind of prepare us, on a quantum level of whether or not we subscribe to our nature and we follow, creating order in life. And by creating order, I mean bringing light to the world and doing good things to permeate the existence of the world. Or we are contrary to our nature, and it's just like what happens when you throw a rock up into the air. Gravity's going to pull it back down. So if you're contrary to your nature, eventually that is going to end in a pattern that's not definable, which is chaos.
Right.
So those were the two things that I
Right.
experienced. And I think that other people through time have experienced those things as well too, like the
Yeah.
Egyptians, the Rosicrucians, Masons from, hundreds of years ago, but especially the Egyptians, because when you look at the hieroglyphs from Egypt, like why is Amut have the bottom of a rhinoceros and the head of a crocodile? What it's symbolizing is that when the heart is weighed on those scales, and if the heart weighs more than that feather symbolically, then the heart is consumed by that demon, and you
Right.
cease to exist. And that was the thing they were most afraid of, is no existence at all. But the weight of the hippopotamus bottom signifies the weight and the mass of chaos, because chaos is in everything, in all time and space,
Interesting.
in all fabric of being, in God itself. And the jaws of that, it's like once you go into that path, escaping the jaws of a crocodile are nearly impossible once that thing grabs hold of you. And that's the way that when I look at these symbols, I interpret them as that they didn't see necessarily these half, these figures composed of two animals, or half man, half human. They're symbolic, and that's the way
Right.
that the only way that they could represent these ethereal, esoteric forms of thought, streams of consciousness, into a way that they could teach other people these things. And even the flesh for some of these things were green, and the color green represents rebirth and renewal, following along the lines of the lessons that those different deities and those gods in Egyptian magic and Egyptian religion taught.
So I mean, do you ascribe to the philosophy that, you know, the suffering that we go through in life and depressive periods and such actually help you grow spiritually and are a great blessing?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
suffering is necessary to for a couple reasons. I mean, first and foremost, the most important thing that suffering does, if we allow it to, is that it starts a grieving process, which is it's a cleansing process. It's purification.
It's true.
It's a I mean, literally, like, think about it. Like, you cry. Why do we cry? There's a physiological reason that, the body produces tears, which, it's salt and water.
Right.
But why do we cry? I mean, symbolically, you could look at it as like, that's a rite of lustration. That's a
Wow.
water, that's cleansing.
Yeah.
And think about it. When you cry, you feel like this weight is lifted off of you. Just like if you have
Right.
mud on your hands and you wash them off, you feel better, and
100%.
there's something to that. And you can even tie that into, a lot of people don't think about, like, there's a very powerful thing in the book of Genesis when it talks about, everybody forgets that before God said, let there be light, and there was light, that there was the water.
That's right.
The water. And so, like, that's like a first cleansing. And then the light is fire, so suffering is necessary for us to go through these stages of, it's almost elemental. It is elemental. There's the water, there's the fire, there is the earth, which is, the burial of things, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And then there's the air, which is, kind of letting it go, giving it away. And it becomes part of the divine consciousness again.
Yeah. And it's very humbling too, when you go through difficult periods in life. It humbles you. I think it helps. I mean, it's also just, sometimes it comes from the realization of that your own faults, can be a sad process, to realize that you've made mistakes and that you're not so good. And it's a way, it's a letting go of the ego, this old self that's been limiting you. And it's a painful process, but it's the best. And I think we should all, go for it, not try to fight against it. So many people nowadays want to take pills to get them out of the depression or whatever the state is, but I'm not going to do that. I mean, I go through depression sometimes, but I don't, I know it's good for me. I know it's a process, and I just know that eventually I'll get through it and things will get better. So I have to,
Yes.
it's a spiritual process, and
Absolutely.
I embrace it personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. And especially about the part with, depression and different forms of sadness that you inquire or you encounter, because, those are negative aspects of the self. And there's something that is making you take a look at something that you're doing. Like, one of the best things that I've learned in life is that everything that we have in our lives, whether good or bad, is because of a choice that we have made. Now, that doesn't mean that if something bad happens to us, it's necessarily our fault, because,
Right.
if we get hit, if we get hit by a drunk driver and it kills, your wife or your child, that's awful. However, you did make the choice to get into your car at a certain time period and to go drive down that street for whatever reason.
Right.
So when you look at it like that, then you come to the realization that you are in control of your destiny, of your fate. Now, you don't necessarily know what that is going to be, but you are in control of that. And facing these things like depression and the shadows of the self by going within and all the way down, and you go through that battle, and it's a lifelong thing. And by every time you do that, there's something else that awakens inside of you, and it's just like moving that alchemical cubical stone.
Right.
It's pushing it a little bit further so that light can come through and you see a little bit more. And it gives you an intuitive compass. It gives you this gift of intuition that, when you get that feeling, maybe I shouldn't get in my car right now for whatever reason, and I've come to trust those feelings, those visions, those thoughts that come into my life
Little
more
intuition.
than I don't.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the intuitive compass.
Oh, that's true, man. So let's see. I got a couple other questions here. So, since you're a very artistic person, and you're inclined towards the arts and being creative, do you feel that Masonry needs a kind of facelift, especially to attract younger people? Just the whole style of it, the way it looks. I mean, from the outside, like I've got an 18-year-old son, and I tried to subtly get him more interested in Masonry, but I think for him it just seemed goofy.
Right.
And I think that's not good that we seem goofy. I mean, we shouldn't seem goofy. We should seem cool, like your documentaries.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
The issue is that there are a lot of people that are afraid of uh, the heavy occult aspects of it. You know, the
Mm.
hidden, right?
Right.
For
Which is what makes it
instance,
cool.
right,
That's what really makes it shine, right?
right. For instance, the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite in year it was 1988, I think. I could be wrong about the year, but you know, he was worried about the idea that the ninth degree apron, right? The
Uh,
original one was, you know, there was a hand holding a severed head, and then there was crimson drops of blood on
evil,
the apron.
evil.
Yeah, and then there's a dagger, right?
Right, right,
And people that don't understand it think like, oh God, they cut off people's heads, but no,
right.
it's not that.
Yeah.
However, the more that we shy away from the traditions of what is really taught in Masonry, and it's about the lesson of coming to grips with that you will one day die, that we are
Mm,
mortal beings,
that's right.
physically mortal, but we are spiritually immortal. It does need a facelift in the sense of not Masonry, but utilizing the beautiful images and the symbols that we have to let it be what it is. You know, it's
Mm,
like, you know, it's like that old saying of like, you know, it's like someone's trying to put lipstick on a pig, you know.
right, right, right.
And that's been happening to Masonry, because Masonry is, you know, it's not a pig. It's this
Yeah,
beautiful, you know, skeletal, you know, magician, you know, floating out of a coffin with fire around it.
right.
And you know, and that's beautiful. And for people that are afraid of that stuff, then it's not the time for them to become or look at being a Mason. If you're
Mm,
curious about that, there's something in you telling you that, you know, I want to learn more about this, then maybe I should take a look at it. But
mm.
I've always been of the mindset that it's better to have quality over quantity anyways, and
Oh yeah,
advertising it
absolutely.
like
Well, I can
some
see that.
church
I can
group
see
or,
that in your food too, man. I can see some of the dishes
oh
you're
yeah,
making. Quality over quantity. You know,
yeah,
it's not about the American, all you can eat buffet where it's all like
yeah,
really low quality, but hey, we got a ton of it, so it's a good deal, right?
yeah,
No. A
yeah,
good
yeah,
deal is
exactly.
is high quality, but a small amount. So you're gonna feel fantastic after you're done eating it, and you're gonna enjoy it the whole time too. I mean, that's
Yep.
that's my take, and I think you probably seem like the
Yeah,
same kind of
I
guy there.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I love cooking.
Yeah, I love cooking too. Um, so I'll let you go, bro. But before we get off, maybe it'd be interesting to just see what are you thinking about nowadays? I mean, what's your new research interest? You know, Masons I know are always digging in, reading a book or looking online to find out more information about something. What's been one of the latest things you've been sort of exploring and trying to learn more about?
I've been exploring uh, different philosophers that, you know, like I would identify myself as being an eternalist from a philosophical and I guess a religious, almost a religious point of view. But
Hmm.
just digging into like more sources of where Masonic teachings come from, like I was saying, like a history of magic and whole works and some of those other types of writings. And also to, you know, I've always been fascinated with folk magic and witchcraft because of the history and the power that it held over people, that they were afraid of understanding what that was. And, you know, all it really was, you know, back when it was really popular, is that you know, aspects of folk magic, like they called it the cunning man and the wise woman. Like they knew how to use the herbs of the forest, and they could survive on their own doing these things. So you know, I love studying about uh, witchcraft and folk magic. um, you know, I'm not some dark sorcerer or something like that, but
Yeah.
that stuff holds very little weight with me. But I like looking at the thought, and it's very poetic, like the way some of it's written. It's very beautiful, the word structure and the flowery language. And there's another work that I've read several times, and it's a long book, but it's called Azoatia by Chumley. And
Hmm.
the books they're going for $10,000 if you can find a copy of it.
As Oasia? Is that a
Yeah,
word?
Az
What is that?
Azoetia. Yeah. I'll let you find that for yourself what the word means.
Azoetia. Okay, I'll look it up.
Yeah, Azoetia. And another good one too is Children of Cain.
Children of Cain. Oh,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. Do you know about the whole temple legend of the Rosicrucians with the line of Cain and Seth and the molten?
Yes.
You've heard about
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to that? Do you believe you're in the line of Cain and you're half? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's compelling.
Yeah. Symbolically, I mean, I think Cain represents the first initiated man in a sense.
Sure.
You know, because Abel is kind of this, you know, happy-go-lucky, just go with the flow kind of guy that's written about in biblical literature. And Cain, you know, I look at everything symbolically, like the slaying of his brothers, the slaying of his former self. And, you know,
that's right.
Just like, you know, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden too, like there's that initiatic experience they had as well too, of like, you know, eating from the tree of knowledge and the voice that says, now they have become like us, you know, not like me, like us, you know, the aspects of deity.
That's right.
So yeah, I love the looking at the line of Cain and all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating.
I just subscribe to it in the sense of the symbolic nature of it, you know, not literally. Like I know some people that are like, oh, we're going to do a ritual about raising Cain, and just I'm like, it's not what it's about. Not to me. It's about it's about, you know, going forward with being marked that you realize that you are going to die, and even if Cain never slew Abel, you know, they lived a lot longer according to the Old Testament, but they still died, you know, except for Enoch, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to Peter Dawkins, some of his stuff today, because I'm doing research for a presentation I'm going to do on unknown philosophers in September. They invited me to come on, and I've decided I'm going to talk about the symbol of the Rose Cross, just the different meanings of that, because, you know, that's just so fascinating. And I love Rosicrucianism.
And I was just on that with Cosmo and Briggs.
Great show. Really great show. Really respectful guys, and they really bring on some quality people, and they have good conversations. So it's I'm looking forward to it. And, you know, I like sometimes getting asked to do a presentation because it kind of forces me to finally research something that I've been wanting to for a while, because now I have a deadline. Now I've got to figure it out by that date. So it's awesome for me too. But anyway, brother, thank you so much for coming on. It's awesome to finally meet you. I mean, I wish I could meet you in person and we can have something to eat and have a beer maybe one day. Once this COVID thing clears up, right?
Yep.
But and I look forward to all of your work in the future. Please keep it up. I think you're doing great work. You're helping humanity along in your own way. And we need more people like you. So I thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, brother, for having me. Great time. And hopefully I'll see you tonight on the presentation for the fifth degree.
I'll have to stay up a little later, but I'll be on.
Awesome. Cool.
All right, bro. Thank you so much. Peace.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Stay safe.